Tom, as you're aware from our announcement, and that is the Deputy Director and also the Director of Research for the Georgia Tech Research Institute. GTRI, as it's known, is the largest research entity as part of Georgia Tech. Without further ado, please let me welcome Tom McDermott. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to give you maybe a little different talk from the perspective of what you do here, but it's really going to be focused on applying systems engineering disciplines to change process. So we're going to go through a kind of a series of little things that are maybe learning experiences associated with a class that I teach. As Mike mentioned, my background's a little bit diverse. I'm a computer architect by trade and kind of still stay in that role on occasion. I spent 18 years at Lockheed initially doing engineering disciplines, but I had an opportunity in my last 4 years at Lockheed to run the F-22 avionics development program. GTRI, we're an integral part of Georgia Tech, so I am a faculty member at Georgia Tech. I'm a state of Georgia employee doing this. We're not a private company. We have a specific benefit there that's kind of unique in some of these organizations across the country, where we get to sit on campus and work hand in hand with the academic side of research on a daily basis. If you describe my organization, I always like to show a little picture of how my organization works.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
EDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
So one of the nice things in my business is most of your learning comes out of Super Bowl commercials. It's a good thing, but you know, that's a good way to describe my organization. You can call it 650 or 700 independent companies, you can call it 7 labs, you can call it one group, but in a way it's a lot of cats running around, and my job is sort of to herd them into a common set of themes. Really, to do that takes an interesting set of management techniques that I learned through the engineering process as a systems engineer, and they center around systems thinking, which one might call the softer side of engineering. This presentation goes through and discusses the idea of doing process improvement in an organization, but it can apply to many things. It's really about how you lead and execute change within an organization. And a change-focused culture, and the culture is kind of the key word here as you go through it, which requires a bunch of different disciplines. And then at the bottom level again, everybody has to be engaged in the process. So we like to study Toyota. I mean, the Toyota production system is a very interesting model for continuous process improvement. It's been tried in a lot of places. It's failed in a lot of places. What's pretty unique about Toyota is they have a culture that does everything on this chart. Basic principles of Toyota are everyone's engaged. So many of us in product development, we understand this. One of the things we understand is that there's a life cycle of organizational decisions. And those things are very similar to life cycles of products. First phase is an assessment phase where you actually have to understand what change has to be implemented. Then you have to make a decision of what you're going to go do. Then you go through a development process where you deploy it out to your community and get feedback along the way. Then you sustain it for a while, and then you actually sunset it and go on to the next one. Now, many of us, when we're in this discipline, you know, we kind of have this view of what the process change should do up front. If you want to change culture, it's a process that you can go through, and leaders can lead it. So the question is how do I lead a cultural change? I mean, a cultural is something that you just can't put your hands around. It's something that's very complex in nature. So this is a point here. It's not just a presentation on cats and primates. We get to the people here eventually, and we want to look at how we do them. So I'm going to introduce you to a guy named John Boyd. I'm a follower of John Boyd, what some people of us call us a disciple of John Boyd. John Boyd was not a manager. He was not an innovator. He was not a product developer. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. He was an asshole, as they often say, in that community. He came to Georgia Tech and got a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. He was studying thermodynamics, and he got this idea of what he called the energy maneuverability theory as applied to aircraft, really focused on entropy. And the idea here is if you can change your direction while losing the least amount of energy, you're typically going to win in an engagement. And so he developed that theory and he applied it to fighter planes. So he worked with General Dynamics, other companies, the F-16, to apply these theories in terms of very maneuverable airplanes. So if you look at a dogfight, a typical dogfight, the one that can turn fastest while losing the less speed is the one that's usually going to win, because you want to get behind the guy and take a shot from behind. And talking about a thing called the orientation phase, which is really this assessment process when you talk about the life cycle of organizational decisions, variety and rapidity without the harmony lead to confusion. Harmony and initiative without the variety lead to uniformity. So you need to have all of those. So how do you generate harmony and initiative so you can exploit the variety and rapidity of it? And to do that, you have to uncover the interactions that foster it. So this is where we introduce the concept of systems thinking. Systems thinking is the science of interactions, effectively. And then you go through a phase that he calls obstruction analysis. So if I'm going to decide a solution to this, what are going to be the obstructors of that solution? I don't necessarily care about the results of the solution. At this point in time, I'm going to need to understand what the obstructions would be, which can be process, it can be lack of knowledge or too much knowledge. Quite often it's who ends up with the power, or what is the value of it. So really good systems thinking people tend to be able to predict the future. Not because they got any kind of magic thing, but because they tend to see a pattern, the complex systems going into real early in the process. Take initiative, so leadership comes in. Mental modeling is a great tool here, so how do I effectively apply my vision to the whole team I'm working with? Words are the worst way. Pictures and stories are much better. And then defining the interaction. This is where the engineering comes in, because you got to fix the interactions, not the obvious problems. Then the stovepipes will start forming around things like that. Then you try and train your leadership as a whole, and then there's probably a period where you'd have to change some of your leadership, because some of them aren't going to ever get the concept. They're not going to ever be able to think outside of these blinders that they have on.
Tom, thank you so much for
Uh-huh.
Very thoughtful, illuminating presentation.